Martin and Michael Caine are competitors in the Riviera's most profitable business, but with very different styles.
Do you have any idea what it feels like to take a woman for 20 bucks?
No, I haven't. I'm afraid it's a little out of my class.
Can two con men survive in a town really made for one?
Really? We find a woman, set a price, and the first man to extract the correct amount from her wins.
Wish me luck.
Let the contest begin.
If I lose, I'll leave. If I win, you leave.
To prove once and for all who is the dirtiest, the rottenest,
Do you possess?
the sleaziest, the sneakiest, the phoniest,
Thank you, Your Highness.
the trickiest,
Don't you ever have an emotion that originates above the waist? No!
the all-time champion of dirty, rotten scoundrels.
Surely he was no match for you. I'm younger than you, better looking than you, I'm thinner than you.
Know your limitations. You are a moron.
Steve Martin is the man no woman can resist.
Eat your food.
Excuse me. May I go to the bathroom first?
Of course you may.
Thank you.
And Michael Caine is
Lawrence Jameson.
Chips O'Toole. Dr. Emil Schaffhausen. Third.
and they're both dirty, rotten scoundrels.
Do you want the whole world to know?
Dirty, rotten scoundrels. You mustn't turn your back on them for a second.
Welcome to the latest episode of the B Movie Club. I'm your host, Kevin. This week we'll be discussing the 1988 comedy classic, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, starring Steve Martin and Michael Caine. For those of you joining us for the first time, each week on the B Movie Club, I discuss certain guilty pleasures and forgotten classics of the past. You can go to our page on Facebook, Original B Movie Club, and give us the big thumbs up. Also go to our page on YouTube, KD9575. Hit the subscribe button. It's totally free. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at the B Movie Club. And don't forget to spread the word, won't you? The more the merrier. If you do those things, you get all the latest updates. Every time I post a video, anytime I find a funny article, I just pass it on to you. That's how we do around these parts, okay? Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. In this movie, Michael Caine plays a very successful con man in the south of France, named Lawrence Jameson. He cons wealthy and corrupt women with stories of how he's an exiled prince and he needs money to fight the insurgents, something along those lines. And these women just kind of, here, take my pearls and my jewels and my money. All's going well until a young con man, Freddie Benson, played by Steve Martin, rolls into town. And he's not as successful as Lawrence. His sights aren't quite that high. He just kind of tells sob stories of, oh, you know, I need to save my money for my sick grandmother, blah, blah, blah. Just basically to get free meals out of the deal, essentially. Lawrence is like, whatever's clever. You're breezing through town. But problems arise when they both have their sights set on the same person. And when Freddie gets there first, Lawrence is kind of irritated, obviously, because now, the moment one con man appears, then the next time the lady's going to be twice as skeptical. So he decides we got to get rid of this guy. So he conspires to get rid of him, but Freddie sniffs it out and comes back and threatens to blow the lid off of Lawrence's thing unless Lawrence teaches him the tricks of the trade, teaches him to be as successful as he is. And he agrees to do that if, when they're done, he'll just leave. He'll go off and go his merry way. So he starts teaching him about, you know, culture and class and the finities and things like that. Is finities even a word? Finery? Finery is a word. You know, how to dress, how to put, I don't know, dippity-doo in your hair, I guess, slick your hair back, have a pencil-thin mustache, things like that. That's all very important. So he's teaching him all these things, but at the same time, his secret plan is to kind of humiliate Freddie and kind of make his life miserable, so he finally just says, forget it, I'm out of here. So he does this by kind of basically making Freddie act like his crazy, deranged brother who lives in the basement. When Lawrence is like kind of seducing these women, oh, we'll be married, we'll move to America, after you give me 100,000 francs. Oh, by the way, here's my crazy brother who will be living with us. So after they've given them the money, they meet the crazy brother. The wives say, okay, I'm out.
Not mother?
No, Ruprecht. She's not our mother. Go on, Diana. You were saying?
Well, I think that the...
Ruprecht!
May I take your trident, sir?
Yes.
Now, Diana, as you were saying, you don't think the poor should be allowed in museums.
I think the
Ruprecht, don't take the cork off the fork.
Why is the cork on the fork?
To prevent him hurting himself and others. Ruprecht, eat your applesauce. Ruprecht, we have wonderful news. Diana and I are going to be married, and we are all going to live in Palm Beach. Ruprecht! Eat your food.
Excuse me. May I go to the bathroom first?
Of course you may.
Thank you.
So after this works a few times, Michael Caine's counting the money, but he doesn't give any money to Freddie, even though that was kind of the deal. It's like, where's my cut? What the heck? Eventually he just says, forget it, I'm out of here. But then he sniffs it out, what's going on, and he says, I'm gonna spill the beans, and they come up with a wager. Okay, here's the wager. We will both go for the same woman at the same time, and whoever can get $50,000 out of her will get to stay and live in the palatial estate and just basically do their thing in the French Riviera. And the loser will have to hit the bricks, will have to leave. And through a case of hilarious adventures, I don't want to spoil everything. I don't want to give everything away, okay? There's a lot of interesting, fun things that happen here. It's exciting. This movie was originally based upon an earlier movie from 1964 called The Bedtime Story that starred David Niven and Marlon Brando. Similar plot. The original writer of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels said, why don't we remake this movie? Bought the rights to it. And it was going to be a vehicle for, of all people, Mick Jagger and David Bowie. Shocking, I know. They were going to play roles in this movie. They were going to be the leads. I believe Mick Jagger was going to be the Steve Martin role, and David Bowie was going to be the Michael Caine role. But they dropped out at the last minute. They bailed. I think there was a Martin Scorsese project that they were going to work on. So they started tossing out names: John Cleese, Eddie Murphy, Richard Dreyfuss, all these different all these different actors and comedians. And eventually they settled upon Michael Caine and Steve Martin, which I think worked quite well, actually. So they cast them in it. They flew him out to France and started working on this. Michael Caine's whole appearance in this movie is like an homage to David Niven with like the slick back hair, the pencil-thin mustache that we all love. But it's great. It's like he went on to actually be nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance in this movie. Steve Martin did not get zippity-doo. Very sad. Michael Caine wound up losing, sadly, to Tom Hanks in Big. So there you go. The director of this movie is Frank Oz. Frank Oz is most famously the voice of Miss Piggy from those Muppet movies. And he had actually directed quite a few things up to this point as well. This was the first movie that he directed that did not have Muppets in it, or puppets. He directed The Dark Crystal and Muppets Take Manhattan and things like that. This is the first one. As far as I know, there's no Muppets or puppets roaming around. I don't know. You have to look in the background, I guess. Another interesting little tidbit. The man who plays Arthur, who is Lawrence Jameson's butler, if you look really close, you might recognize him. Because he also played the Emperor in all those Star Wars movies. See? Hey, hey, hey. It's all coming together. It's all woven. This movie actually went on to inspire a couple other things. There was a movie that came out about 13 years later, kind of a female version of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, called Heartbreakers, and it had like Sigourney Weaver and Jennifer Love Hewitt. And then later, they came out with a musical version based upon the movie Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And that starred John Lithgow, of all people. So hey, see, there's a lineage here. It's proud. Good stuff. What else can I tell you about this movie? When they started filming, they actually didn't have an ending yet. They didn't know what direction the story was going to go. And Michael Caine and Steve Martin actually ad-libbed many of their lines. Many of the funniest scenes were just straight ad-libs. There's the scene in the prison cell where Steve Martin's desperately trying to remember Lawrence Jameson's full name. And he's kind of James Jesterson, one of those deals. That was all ad-libbed, and Frank Oz, the director, is crouched down there, basically to tap the other actor on the foot to basically say, okay, now jump in and say, you mean Lawrence Jameson? Because they're just going to let him do his thing. So that was kind of cool. There was a teaser trailer that came out where it's Michael Caine and Steve Martin walking along like the edge of the water, kind of being polite and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually you see Steve Martin push a woman into the water, and Michael Caine kind of shoves cotton candy in a kid's face. People thought that was a scene from the movie, and actually it wasn't. They looked at, typically, as you know, when there's a trailer, they take scenes from the movie, like what they think are the funniest parts, and put that in the trailer. This time they wanted a trailer early enough, and they didn't actually have enough scenes from the movie already filmed to kind of make a trailer. So he filmed just this scene, spent a day doing it, and people loved it. People were shocked that it wasn't actually a scene in the movie, though. So what are you going to do? This movie currently has an 87% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. All the critics, I guess that's not true, 87% of the critics really enjoyed this. Roger Ebert talked about how he liked it. Vincent Canby said he liked it a lot. They thought the chemistry between the two actors was great. They thought the comedy was great. They thought the acting was great. It was great, up and down. What can you say? I enjoy this a lot. It's kind of underrated. When it's funny, it's hilarious. And it really kind of, I was thinking about this watching this. Up to this point, Michael Caine, when you saw him in movies, he always had his crazy Michael Caine hair. If you know what I'm talking, like the crazy curly thing and the big crazy glasses. This is the first time he kind of looked not quite so crazily British, I guess. I don't know. He looked a little too 70s, even well into the 80s. So, good times. So that's Michael Caine. That's my horrible Michael Caine. That's as far as I'm willing to go with my Michael Caine impression, by the way. So I highly recommend it. It is still streaming instantly on Netflix. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Send me any favorite scenes, favorite quotes. You can send me some quotes as well if you want. Any favorite quotes, comments, or questions, and I may talk about it on the show. Don't forget to send in movie suggestions as well. Next week, I'm moving away from the comedy genre to the sci-fi horror majesty that is Invaders from Mars, which is streaming instantly on Netflix, so rush out and see it and let me know what you think. Don't forget to go to our page on Facebook, Original B Movie Club. Give us the big thumbs up. Go to our page on YouTube and subscribe. It's totally free. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at the B Movie Club. As you know, I end every episode with a totally out of context quote. And here it is. Ruprecht, do you want the genital cuff? That didn't sound anything like Michael Caine, but anyway, that was what I was going for. So good times. There's a lot of quotable scenes in this. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? rush out and see Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Next week, Invaders from Mars. Thank you for joining us, and be well.